good morning. And I'm going to start talking about the value proposition of concentrating solar power technologies. I think it's good that Chuck has been before me because he has already done part of the job, so I can go faster in some of the part of the presentation. And I also announced you that I'm going to get a little philosophical because I like to do this, and I think it's important for the discussion. So I'm going to emphasize a little that we need to speed up the energy transition. That is exactly what Chuck was saying in his presentation. Then I'm going to talk about energy planning, because this is the question that the last question we have been dealing here. Can we let's say improve things when things are already being problematic because we put too much PV or something, or we are not really doing a good job in establishing the mix that we need to have in the future? This is something that I think we need to discuss. And then I will be talking about the concentrating solar power technologies, because I assume that most of you especially the colleagues from the field, they know completely, but others that may be here and that are also listening may not know. One of the reasons we established this conference is what I have the feeling, I think this is shared by many, that CSP is not very well known outside the CSP world, and it's very not. And now that we have all this discussion, and that fundamental discussion, what we are going to do to speed up the energy transition, how we are going to move toward the renewable energy of the future, I think all the options have to be on the table, and people have to be aware of the different possibilities and the different capabilities of each one of the technologies. So the purpose of this presentation is to explain the capabilities of concentrating solar power technologies, and this is what I'm going to do in the last part of the presentation. So I am going to speed up this part of this section, because that's already been presented. If we continue as usual, business as usual, or even what has been already committed, we are not going to achieve the 1.5 degrees scenario, and much less. Sorry, we are not going to achieve the 2 degrees scenario, much less the 1.5 scenario. And has been said before in previous talk, when we go beyond 2.2 degrees or even beyond 1.5 degrees, we are in uncharted territory. We don't know what is going to be really what's happening in the planet and what are the effects. Also, Chuck has been showing that we are also already experiencing the effects of climate change. So this we need to speed up. The other thing is that, of course, we are trying to reduce emissions, and at the same time, the population is growing, the need for energies are growing. So we have two different tendencies. We have increasing the energy generation, and at the same time, we need to decrease to make a substantial reduction, and we need to make a big effort to increase the renewable energy capacity, and this is the method that have been done before. So I'm not going to just to put different. This is from IRENA. This is the different let's say analysis, but the same conclusion. We are not doing enough. We need to speed up, and we need to really go renewable and in the renewable energy direction. So now this goes directly to energy planning. Shall we plan the energy system of the future? Shall we not? What should we do? And I'm saying that I've been, when I was a child, from 7 to 11 years old, I was a professional chess player. Not an amateur chess player, a professional player. I quit at 11, but I was playing in the national tournaments in my country, in Spain. And the one interesting thing with the chess is that it teach you that you have to think what you are going to do over and over and over again, because any bad moves at the, let's say, very start in the game give you. This is an actual game. I'm playing now, not professional. I'm playing online, and I try to get into the first 200 out of 2 million people that are in the network. I am not there yet, But this was in move 48. I was in a not very good position. And when you analyze the situation, I was in a bad position in move number 48 of the play, because I did a wrong movement in the move 9. Okay, so this is something that let's say you have to plan this, and this also applies for the energy system. Is what we were talking before. You just cannot start going for the cheapest option, the fastest option, the more simple option. And this is what we've been discussing. This is a complex game, and it's a vital game, not a chess game. And we really need to be very proactive. So we need to consider always that energy is more than a commodity, and take this always into consideration. We have to be proactive, always have a vision of what energy system you want to transition and why. So you have to have the picture of where you want to go. You cannot just let let's say the life take you whatever it goes. To me, another thing is don't be technological neutral. I think this thing about technology neutral is oversimplification. I think you have to have a plan where you want to go. You have to have a vision, and what you have to do is to think over and over and over again what is the best way to reach that vision that you consider that is where you want to go. You need to monitor progress toward the plans and continuously adapt your strategy, because things are changing, and also a lot of things that you think that are going in one direction, then they have additional side effects and all the things. You have to change about these things. And always going back to chess, we made always the move that gives you the greater flexibility and maximize the number of paths to reach your vision. When you're playing chess, every time you move, if you just are moving to gain a tactical position, to get a piece or something, you are going to lose. You have to always move in a way that whatever happens, you have a lot of options, and it opens your game. It's not just focusing on one objective and on one path. So all the good moves in chess open a lot of possibilities for you to win, not just one only possibility, because most likely the only possibility you're thinking, the other guy is thinking, and it's not going to happen. Okay. So another thing now, this is chess and artificial intelligence. I was a chess player when I was a child. Then I moved to be a tennis player. But then I wanted, one of my hobbies is artificial intelligence and computers, and I was working on that in the 80s when IBM didn't start the personal computer, and we were doing artificial intelligence with the very basic thing about analyzing all the possibilities, and I was programming chess games, and one of the problems that you have is the horizon effect. If you analyze all possible alternatives up to 2 or 3 or 10 moves ahead, and things will look good, you may get the best movement until that point, but you may forget that if you go the next step, instead of 10 moves away, 11 moves in the future, then in the 11 moves of the future, what you are doing may kill you, may produce a checkmate. This is what is called the horizon effect. Sometimes you don't analyze the thing deep enough, and you fail. So let's say the lesson here is you have to analyze deeply, as deeply as you can, and keep doing that after every move. It's not that you do it at the beginning. You have every time, and you try to analyze as much as possible. So summarizing, in chess, to be successful, you should have a clear plan, be disciplined in going into the plan, be good in assessing situation, be always vigilant for the signs of horizon effect, that you may not be considering something that is relevant and it may kill your plans. Consider responsible choices, avoid always bad moves, and adjust to changing circumstances. This is to be a successful chess player. To be a successful energy policy planner, you have to have a clear plan, you have to be disciplined, you have to be good at assessing situations, you have to always be vigilant for signs of the horizon effect, something that you are not considering may make a big effect. Consider responsible choices, avoid bad moves, and adjust to when circumstances change. This looks relatively similar. And regarding the horizon effect, to me, this is something that summarizes this position on all this discussion that you still see with some politicians especially from the other places, about climate change and all the thing, and believe or not believe. If the goal is to ensure the survival of mankind in the midterm, next to 300 or 400 years, then the widespread development of renewable energies, and especially of solar energy, should be one of the most priorities of the moment, if not the most. This is what Chuck was saying. But if your goal is just to ensure the economic prosperity of specific companies and individuals in a very short time, then business as usual is fine. Okay. This is more philosophical things. To me, the thing is, to me, it was very nice what Polymarchus says. Can you, Socrates asked Polymarchus, can we persuade you? And he said, no, if we don't listen. Very recently, I saw on the movie, on TV, the president of a government said, I don't believe in this because I haven't read it, but I don't believe it. So this is, now let's go to the, to the more technical aspects. The sun as an energy source, this is also still a little philosophical, but it's just to remind everyone why solar is important. This is something I did a very long time ago. I multiply all natural reserve by 3, just not to have any discussion about the numbers, if it's a little more, a little less. Every cube represents the total number of natural reserves. You see natural gas, uranium, coal, we have some coal, and this is represent just the cube that in one year, the amount of energy that we receive from the sun. Okay. To be fair, actually, if we have the reserve to 300 years, I should have put a cube there of energy, of solar energy for 300 years, but then you will not see the other cubes. So I just refrain to do that. But that tells you what everybody in the planet, all the life in the planet know, that what is driving this planet is solar energy. And I don't think why we are still having some discussion about this. This is also something that some people complain sometimes, say, well, but solar energy occupies a lot of land. This is from Carlos Rubbia, Nobel Prize of Physics, and he make this is the amount of land that you need with the current concentrated solar thermal technology. The current efficiency of concentrated solar technology is less than 20% out of the sunlight that you get to power the whole world. Okay. And this little one here is what you need to power the European Union. The other interesting thing with the solar is that is relatively spread around the planet, so you don't have geopolitical tension, you don't have any political problems, and you have sun in many places. And the other interesting thing also is that just going into thermodynamics is equivalent to the heat from a source at 5,777 Kelvin, and that means that a lot of this heat can be transformed, more than 90% can be transformed into work directly because of the high quality of the heat. Of course, everything is not rosy. We have day and night, we have fluctuation on the energy, and we also have clouds and fluctuation. But if you look at the fluctuation on related to the clouds, this is the distribution of energy for 1 year, and you can see that at least I can guess what I'm going to have more or less. So it's relatively predictable, and it's more predictable than other renewable energy sources. So advantage, abundant and renewable, geographically distributed, high exergy content, disadvantage, intermittent, variable, and relatively low surface density is 1 kilowatt per square meter. So you want a lot of kilowatts, you need a lot of square meters. But as I said before, it's not relevant in the scale of the planet. So now I'm going to explain how concentrating solar power try to maximize the advantages and address the disadvantages of these technologies. So I'm going to discuss a little what is the main characteristic of concentrated solar thermal technologies. And one of the main characteristics that is different from photovoltaics is that we transform the radiant energy from the sun into heat. And then we transform the heat into useful energy. It can be heat, the heat can be transformed later to produce mechanical work, etc. The interesting thing is that we can do this at low temperature, at a very big range of temperature. Of course, different temperature, achieve different temperature requires, and I will explain later, different kind of technologies and different concentrations, but you can really deploy, to have a large amount of possibilities and a large amount of applications. A typical concentrated solar power plant, a solar power system is like this. You concentrate the solar radiation in a receiver. In that receiver, you increase the enthalpy of a working fluid and transform into heat on the thermal energy. Then the thermal energy can be stored. The interesting thing is when you have the radiant energy transformed into thermal energy, then you can combine with other thermal energies. And we have, for instance, with fossil fuel and hybridization, or even biomass. In Spain, we have in the north of Spain, near Barcelona, a plant that is a biomass concentrated solar power plant that is running all the time in renewable energy and producing electricity all the time. But in addition, you don't need just to produce electricity. You can produce heat process, solar fuel, solar desalination, solar detoxification, production of heat process for solar air recovery to produce steam. Also, you can also use the heat for mineralogy. So you have a lot of a kind of application. It's not only the production of electricity. And when we talk about the decarbonization of the energy sector, well, we focus a lot on the electricity sector. Electricity sector, I think, is only 30% of the total energy sector. So we need also to decarbonize the rest, and concentrating solar power technologies could also contribute to that, could contribute to the building environment, to the production of energy, thermal energy, and have been said before that at low temperature, Cyprus is a leader in the world about this application, etc. Of course, the most commercial application right now is just to put in the thermal process a power block and produce electricity. When you try to do that, you always have a trade-off between the solar to thermal conversion and the thermal to work convection by the laws of thermodynamics. When you want to transform heat into work, the higher the temperature, the better. When you want to transform radiant energy into thermal energy, the lower the temperature, the better, because the lower the thermal losses. So you have always an optimum. And the other interesting thing with this is that you can store the technology, the thermal energy, and of course, the higher the temperature you store the thermal energy, the less fluid or the less medium that you require for the storage. And you may have, but the thing that is important and has been stated before is that thermal storage is relatively cheap and is already established technology. We have there are plants in the United States. Solana plant that is a 260 megawatt plant that has, if I remember well, 6 hours of storage producing at the nominal power of the plant. We also have in Spain a plant that has 15 hours of storage, and from spring to fall is running 24 hours continuously. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but the amount of how much you concentrate the solar radiation determine the temperature that you can operate and the efficiency if you are trying to operate to produce electricity. We have these are the main technologies that we have. Parabolic trough, they concentrate the sunlight in a line using a parabola, a trough that has a cross-section parabola, and then the approximation with the trough started to be too large, then you can, let's say, divide the trough in little pieces and distribute it then, and then you have the linear Fresnel that is also concentrated in one line. It has the advantage over the parabolic trough that is more compact in terms of space, but also that the receiver is fixed, because the receiver in the parabolic trough is moving. Then you have the parabolic dish that is the one that has the highest concentration, and the similar Fresnel approximation is the tower technology. Out of the four, right now the one that are commercially application is the parabolic trough, linear Fresnel, and central receiver, and most of the application right now, still most of the commercial deployment is parabolic trough. The central receiver is getting a lot of action now, and a little less the linear Fresnel. So I'm going just is the time to impress you. You can concentrate the solar radiation not to infinity, but if you concentrate in a point, you can concentrate 46,000 times. And if you concentrate in a line of the order 215, The current technology, we are not there yet. This is just to show you that we are, parabolic trough, depends how you do the calculation, is between 29 or 50% concentration. Central receiver is between 200 and 1,000. And this is still in around between 1,000 to 2,000. But we can reach 46,000 in point collection and 200 in the other. So we have a lot of room for improvement in terms of technological improvement. I'm not going to go also into the plants. I'm sure that there will be a lot of presentations. So this is a characteristic parabolic trough plants. And this is the current technology we use in molten salt. I see that I'm going to be called to order soon. And this is also a storage, a typical storage. This is our plants in Spain. This is the storage for parabolic trough. The storage for parabolic for tower technology are relatively similar, but at higher temperatures, so with the same volume, you can store additional energy. Linear Fresnel, you have in Spain some application in other places. This is how modern tower looks like, and it's the characteristic length of the order of 1 kilometer, 1.5 kilometers from the last heliostat to the tower. And this is the plant that we have in Spain that has 15 hours of storage. So, going just to summarize the value proposition, concentrated solar thermal provides a very large range of energy service options. We can provide heating and cooling, heat process at high temperature, electricity, solar fuels and chemistry applications. Other speaker will also talk about that. So, then it can be, the other interesting thing can be hybridized with a fossil or with other biomass and other sources. So this is also a very interesting thing, and can be stored at a relatively very high efficiency and relatively low cost. And when deployed with a conventional power block, can be delivered dispatchable and clean and renewable electricity. Another interesting thing of this technology that is more in the economic terms is that it can utilize expertise already available in many countries. So when you go with other technologies, this technology, you can also have the potential to transform your part of your industry to produce components for this technology, and it has all the attributes that to become the backbone of the highly decarbonized energy system of the future. How much time do I have? 2 minutes. Okay. So another interesting thing is that we don't need any additional backup because we already have the conventional power plant inside. The other thing is any improvement of conventional technology will be an improvement of this technology, and also these technologies produce all the ancillary services that in the conventional power plant. Now there is a movement to go to supercritical CO2 cycles that have the potential of having higher efficiency and also to scale down better. This will benefit greatly when they are applicable this technology, because it will give much more flexibility to the kinds of plant that we can produce. Also, we can decarbonize the other industrial sector, especially with solar chemistry and producing for solar fuels. Again, just to give you an example of how the new industry started, it was in Spain with a feed-in tariff. In 6 years, we built 50 plants, starting from scratch. In some cases, there were not even industry. The industry was created and the companies, and then the whole thing was, I participated in 24 feasibility studies of these power plants, and the effort was, and the learning curve, we learned a lot. Well, I think we have Luis Crespo here that will be talking about that later. So, and the other interesting thing is the predictability of the dispatchability, the predictability of the production of the plant. This is real data that I got from Luis, from Stella, about the production of the plant. Thing that is not only in Spain, happening in Spain, but in Spain, the initial plans, I think, was 60% fraction of local value, or local national value, and the last one could be up to 80% of national value. So this is a very important thing for the economics of the country. You can also, and we did a study, I participated in a study for the World Bank for India. You can also reorient mature industries to be suppliers on this, can reinforce other industrial sectors, and have also a huge impact in auxiliary sectors that you need. So also, Another thing that when people stopped this in Spain was for political reasons. I don't think there was any technical reason and not even an economical reason. Stella did with Deloitte a study, and when you put all the money that were in the feed-in tariff and you consider all the savings and all the economic savings, it was a business for Spain to have these plans. And another thing that is important, especially for the Cyprus Institute and for institutions, is that one of the reasons of the success of Spain in deploying so fast this technology is that we have a national center that have been working on this for 30 years and in collaboration, international collaboration with Germany, and mainly with Germany, United States, Israel, that were the main partners. And we produce also not only we did the research there, but we have every year a lot of students, doctoral students that then went into the industry. And these students, they saw that this worked. And when they go to the industry, they have this knowledge with them. And they were also able to confront when you say, oh, this doesn't work and all the things inside the companies. So I think this was one of the secrets of the Spanish success on this technology. So this is the last slide. Well, where applicable, and I mean that the one thing that I didn't say is that, of course, this technology requires sun and direct sunlight. But we have a plan very recently in Denmark of concentrating solar power for district heating. So where applicable is a lot of part of the world, you can use this. Concentrated solar thermal technologies have the potential to be the backbone and the enabler of future renewable energy system based on the appropriate mix of renewable energy technologies. This is what I think we should go. With this, I think.
No. She's